the senatorial race between Doug Jones and Roy Moore. Since this is a historic win, because not since 1992 there hasn't been a Democratic senator in the red state of Alabama for a very long time. So 1992, that's
25 years.
25 years. That's incredible. But let's look at really the big story behind this. Jones won, according to the article, 49.9% of the vote, and Moore 48.4%, with all the precincts reporting in. And this is a huge defeat for the GOP, because there was a point early on during this election where many of the Republican senators and House representatives didn't endorse Moore due to the fact that there were women coming out with allegations stating that he was a pedophile, that he went after young women in high school. For many years, he was banned from malls and even approaching any kind of public schools. And then you had President Trump, who was silent about it for a while. And then later on, he fully endorsed Moore, basically due to the fact that he needed his vote in the Senate to get the large GOP tax cut to happen.
And I think for the school one, it was specifically a case where he met a girl. She didn't want to talk to him, and so then he called her in school.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly if he's not allowed near schools, but he's had instances where he's had connections with girls at schools.
Well, the thing is, though, I want everyone to understand that this is a historic win, but at the same time, too, the Democrat who won, Doug Jones, he won. However, when he gets into the Senate, what will be his policies and issues in regards for fighting progressive policies and populist ideals? Will he deliver real change? Because if he's just a Democrat saying, oh, I'm not Trump, I'm not the Republicans, well, don't be surprised next election cycle he gets defeated by another Republican.
Yeah.
Because I think at this point people want to see real substantive change. They don't want to see just somebody saying, I'm not the other guy. I might give you some crumbs, but I'm not going to fight for you.
At the same time, though, this makes the power play that the GOP has been trying to do with the tax bill they've been doing, that was predicated on them having control over the House, control over the Senate, and they had control by 2 votes, and now they have control by 1 vote. So where before you had to have 2 GOP senators decide to not agree with the majority and they can hold up a bill, now it's just 1.
Right.
So if 1 more of these happens, this entire sweep that they've been going through of not being able to do anything but having all the power will turn into them not being able to do anything without having all the power.
But there's something to take into account, though, especially at the end of the article. This was by the Chicago Tribune. And I'm going to read this last paragraph. It has me just a little bit concerned. For Democrats who've lost several House special elections in red states earlier this year, the way Jones positioned himself could serve as a model. That's a bad thing to do. Jones ran as a moderate who worked to distance himself from the National Party and managed to raise and spend more money than his opponent, partly because of Moore's controversial record. That's a horrible play-by-play action because here, let's rewind back the clocks to 2016 general election cycle when you had Trump versus Clinton. Clinton was basically saying, I'm not Trump, I don't do these things, I'm not saying these things. But when you asked her about real policy issues, she was trying to not win over the progressives and Bernie Sanders supporters and independents. She was trying to win over Republican voters, which wasn't going to happen. There was no way. There's so much hatred between Republican voters and the Clinton family that's an impossible bridge to really build. And the thing is, if the Democratic Party wants to take that model, running as a moderate, for 2018 in the midterm general elections, it could lead to a disaster, or it'll lead to a stalemate in the Senate and House, to where half of it might be Democrat, half of it will be Republican. Same thing for the Senate as well, half Democrat, half Republican, and nothing gets done.
At the same time, though, this has always been their strategy. Remember when Mitch McConnell got challenged by a Democrat?
Yeah.
Her ad campaign was basically, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I'm basically a Republican. I like shooting guns.
Yeah.
And so you know what's never...
No one wants to hear that.
No. You know what's never going to beat a Republican? If you are a Republican, you know what's not? You're not going to vote for? A watered-down Republican.
No, never.
If you want that drink, you're not going to water it down. And Democrats strategy. In this case, it worked. Not because it worked, but because he's running against a pedophile or an accused pedophile with many, many women accusing him. And recent cultural shifts have made America say, well, if a lot of women accuse you, that's as good as evidence. That's basically the consensus that has been made over the last few months. So, and a ton of Democrats have, like Al Franken came down
right
around around that time period as well. So I look at it like Democrat runs as a moderate, trying to distance himself from the party, and manages to squeak a victory of 1.5 points against an accused pedophile.
And that's not a victory, because you got to remember, at least half the population in Alabama voted for that man, Roy Moore.
Right.
Okay, they voted for a man who's being accused of being a pedophile. So that's a terrible move by the Democratic establishment. If they take that move for 2018 and 2020, we'll be right back to where we're at right now. We can't afford that. So if this is something that, if you're listening to us, whether you're local here in Illinois or perhaps maybe you're out of state and you want to see something get done and you're tired of establishment politics, get involved and find out who the people are who are running in your state or your county or your city for the 2018 primary and then general election. Find out where they stand on the issues. You have to remember that these people who are elected into office are public servants. They work for us, not the other way around. And for a long time, Americans have been getting screwed over. We can't allow that anymore. I mean, people are struggling with this GOP tax cut that's happening, with net neutrality and everything else. We're losing, and if the Democrats want to be the resistance, using a moderate strategy will be an epic failure on their part. And then I guess we have to look at third parties then. But that's a story for another day, and I think we need to move on to...
I really wanted to say something.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Go ahead. Interrupt. Well, two things real quick, because I believe it's also even in question as to whether Doug Jones even supports single-payer health care. So there are even like some progressive issues that I personally have with him. However, it is extremely important to note that the only reason the Democrats are so excited about this win, it's because of the black women in Alabama. 98% voted for Doug Jones. He barely won. I hardly call this a victory.
Right.
And I would say for, because I've seen a lot of support and whatnot online, if you are serious about these future elections and making sure that we don't have voter suppression and communities that aren't favored by the candidates that are running, go out and support your local communities. Go and support your local black communities as well. They barely won, and the fact that 98% of the black women in Alabama voted for him, that is the reason why he ended up winning, and that is definitely worth noting.
Yeah, and help people register to vote too. Definitely help people register to vote too. That's a key factor to win too.
I think it's also, even more important than their vote is that a lot of white women just didn't vote.
Yeah.
That was. I think that was a much larger block.
Yeah.
It really required both of them to be there. But, I don't want to take up too much time as we got to move on to another story.
Yeah.
You're watching HardLensMedia.